Hi, I'm John Tickles, and welcome to Remote RPG's 2012 edition! Oh yes, it's 2012, so according to ancient Mayan calendars, we're all gonna die soon. That means it's time to play those RPGs you've been putting off for so long. No, not Elton John the RPG. That's next time. Suikoden, Konami's RPG series loosely based off the classical Chinese novel Shui Hu Zhan, has received only little success in North America. I'll be reviewing Suikoden 1 today, but don't worry, the excellent sequel will be featured in another episode too, when I decide to sell my house so I can afford a copy. Suikoden was released in Japan 1995 on the Sony PlayStation, with the North American release a year later. This is one of the earlier PS1 RPGs before they became more common than first-person shooters are today.
Alright guys, the video game industry is sucking right now, so we have to come up with something fresh. No more stupid first-person shooters like Call of Duty. So if you have any ideas that even somewhat resemble Call of Duty, you can just throw those out right now.
Suikoden, along with RPGs like Beyond the Beyond and Wild Arms, represent that certain transition between 16-bit and 32-bit in the then undercover RPG genre before Final Fantasy VII came along to really establish the RPG as a popular genre of games in North America. When Suikoden was released, it was referred to as one of the greatest RPGs of all time by most people, except GameSpot, who gave it a 6.5, considering the game as a warm-up before moving on to other RPGs such as Final Fantasy VII. Yes folks, Skyward Sword was not the first victim. Although the game shows its age, and is pretty simple, it's still criminally underrated, and a quality game worth your time. You start the game as a silent protagonist in a peaceful city, who learns he is destined to save the world, complete with magical elves, magic, and dwarves. But luckily, these overused RPGs cliches only play a minor role in the overall story, so don't let that deter you from playing. You start off as the son of the top general in the Scarlet Moon Empire's army, but one day your best friend Ted is revealed to have a mysterious power that causes the Empire to hunt him down and misuse it in order to smite their enemies. With your father out fighting another battle, you and your loyal servants decide to protect Ted and escape the city. Soon, through a crazy sequence of events, you end up running into the Liberation Army who's trying to take down the Empire, and on top of this, you soon become the leader of this army, and spend the game recruiting rebel groups and pretty much anyone who's willing to join your fight to take down the corrupt Scarlet Moon Empire. I love how RPGs have to compromise the logic of the story with the targeted male young audience. I mean, this kid is like 15, and everyone around here seems to say, "Here, teenager with no actual military experience and raging hormones, take control of our 200,000 people army and do whatever you want. These grown men aren't good for shit." Anyway, you spend most of the game fighting the generals of the Empire while expanding and fighting with your army. The story mixes classical elements of war, corruption, and a typical fantasy setting. It comes with its simple and subtle messages about justice, friendship, racism, and maturity, but it does come with its really dark and disturbing twists. This is a game about war, and like real war, friends die as they put their lives on the line for their beliefs. You see how the reach of the Empire goes to different towns, and how it affects people across the land in negative ways, and eventually how democracy wins out in the end, despite ridiculous odds. Although it's nothing Shakespearean, it's a pretty good story, if nothing more than a tale of a teenager running around and taking other people's bases. Yeah, okay, I think you all saw this coming.
All your base are belong to us.
Now, I usually go through the characters in this part of the review, but there are 108 characters to find and recruit in this game, with over 90 of them being playable in combat. That's 108 characters, or as the game refers to them, the Stars of Destiny, not counting all the NPCs. Well, to get through these characters fast, I prepared a song for this, so here we go!
Cleo is the servant who I thought was a man. Then I saw Gremio said this chick is hot for damn. What is it with these androgynous characters in Japan? And then I saw Millage said, "What therapy again?" Wait, what? Ow! Wait, what are you...
What the hell's wrong with him?
Y'all take a chill. You need to cool that shit out.
Well, damn, I wish you told me that before I wrote this frickin' half-an-hour song. Well, anyway. As with any game with a ridiculous amount of playable characters, there's a lot of characters that are well developed and have more screen time, and those that are underdeveloped and literally get like a line of dialogue and just suck. I mean, the shopkeeper's not going to do anything for the story. But unfortunately, the latter make up a majority of the characters, but you still have some excellent ones like Gremio, Matthew, Flick, and Victor. I'm more of a quality over quantity kind of guy, but the option to play as all these characters with individualized weapons and status worked great for adding replay value to a relatively short 25-hour game. A cool feature is that if you're late in the game, but you decide you want to suddenly use a low-level character like the Frenchman, you know, if you want to prepare to surrender or something, then just fighting a couple of random battles in a tougher area will quickly level him up to the point where he's nearly the same as the people you've been playing with all game, which kicks ass and saves time to suit your whims. However, with over 90 playable characters comes 90 characters to manage items for. And once again, this is incredibly tedious, and a slow part of any RPG. I seem to be running into this a lot lately. Every character can also only wear certain types of equipment and hold a certain amount of things. So the game allows you to play as over 90 characters, but you feel like you're constantly item managing and such. Having so many characters is Suikoden's first defining feature. The other is the battles. Well, there are three types of battles in Suikoden to be more specific. The regular fighting system, which is the main type of combat. That's an incredibly basic turn-based system, except you control 6 characters at once. This may sound like it's going to make battles really slow and random battles more tedious than usual, but the characters usually attack at the same time, making combat quicker and more interesting to watch. I should also mention the difficulty of the game, because that's where there's a little problem. In Suikoden, the fights weren't too difficult until one boss late in the game, a vampire who was almost impossible. I hate vampires! And the only way to beat him is with...
It's the power of religion! With its power I will always succeed! Call your Bible! Spin, spin, spin! It's the will of God! Make your enemy bleed!
No, I wish. You have to waste precious hours of your life grinding. Grinding is an expected part of any RPG, but I have to mention that I really appreciate it when some games such as The World Ends With You and Terra Enigma have such a good pace or battle system that it doesn't feel like time is even being wasted. Anyway, I power leveled for 3 hours and I still barely beat him after like 6 tries. Soon, when you get to the final boss, he's a complete joke, and I didn't power level it at all. A random boss in the game shouldn't be tougher than the final one. Anyway, aside from that, there's nothing really to praise or complain about here, considering it's a really basic battle system, where the only major flaw is the lack of innovation. However, as an early PlayStation RPG, developers probably weren't looking to take too many chances and were going to stick to the proven Final Fantasy VI battle system. The second types of fights are army versus army, which are story-driven and very fun. It's basically the most epic game of rock, paper, scissors ever. Except your strength and strategy depend on the characters you recruited beforehand. For example, if you find all the members of a certain group, then using them to attack will be much more powerful than, say, if you only found 1 or 2 of them. Also, if you recruit a ninja, he can infiltrate the enemy's army and determine their next move, thus saving you a few thousand men. However, this is war, and making a mistake can result in playable characters actually dying in battle, meaning that you can never use them again. Despite how enjoyable these battles were, they felt like they lacked depth and real strategy. But because there was so much at stake in the story, the game developers did a good job of making the armor battles just feel big overall. And yes, I know it's overused, but epic too. The final types of battles, and my personal favorite, are the one-on-ones against an army general. There are only 3 of these fights in the entire game, but they're absolutely unbelievable. Much like army fights, it's pretty much a rock, paper, scissors game. But what your opponent says before moves are chosen is a clue to what move they'll use. And this is implemented extremely well and was one of the great innovations of the game. The best part about these battles were that they were story driven and always developed the characters further, while being the highlights of the game, because a lot was at stake. They were a little tougher than army battles and a lot more rare, but a good challenge that complemented the characters and story, and were always something to look forward to. However, I have just one complaint. Okay, look at what the protagonist uses to fight. A stick. What's the point in using a stick against people with long swords and arrows? What kind of sense does that make? What kind of message does that send to the enemy when the leader of a rebellion comes at you with a stick? What?
Say what again? I dare you. I double dare you, motherfucker.
What you talking about, Willis?
Well, at least he isn't like others who use their bare hands to fight wars. Anyway, you have a whole country to explore in this game, but to me, the coolest place is definitely my army base. As the leader, you have control over a lot of things in your base, but unfortunately, you don't get to harass your subordinates.
You little scumbag! I got your name! I got your ass! You will not laugh! You will not cry! You will learn by the numbers! I will teach you! Now get up!
The more characters you get, the bigger and better your base becomes, which encourages you to go out and find all the characters and explore the game to the fullest. Recruiting characters is also a vital part of the game, as it helps in army fights and will lead to a better ending. Many of the characters are recruited automatically through the story, but many others can just be recruited by doing certain missions, just asking, or by having enough army members. I'll also mention that the ending of the game is pretty good, as it wraps up the story of every single member of the 108 stars and gives your efforts in hunting them down a sense of closure. The graphics in the game, well, they aren't really good for the PlayStation, but come on, this was 1995, the same year Chrono Trigger was released. Cut it some slack. It does still look good, even if it's nearly 16-bit. And they do their job, even if it's nothing impressive. They have a lot of characters to design, and they all look pretty good, even if they don't have mouths.
Ah, a woman with no mouth. You know, in a lot of ways it's good, but in a lot of other ways, it's really bad.
PlayStation's capabilities are reflected better in the soundtrack, which is really great overall. Some of the music was a little bland, and there wasn't a final boss theme, but the main theme, theme of the Moonlit Night, and theme of the Advancing Army easily compensated. There are also many other memorable songs that have this kind of European and Asian feel, much like some of the work in Xenogears. The primary composer was Miki Higashino, who also scored other classics like Gradius, Life Force, and Contra 3 for the Super Nintendo. I wouldn't call it an ear orgasm-inducing soundtrack, but pretty good because of the variety. Overall, Suikoden is too unknown, even if it is a really standard game, because the point is that it's a really fun RPG that isn't as beloved as its sequel, but really surprised me when I first gave it a shot for how great it was. I'm not sure why this series didn't become more popular than it did, and apparently some of the PSP releases back in Japan aren't doing so well either. But I think any RPG fan should definitely at least give this game a shot. Now, picking up the first Suikoden shouldn't be too much of a hassle. I got my copy for $20 and it's much cheaper and more accessible on the PlayStation Network. But if you're looking for something simple and enjoyable, and an RPG that doesn't ask for much commitment, then Suikoden is right up your alley. Well, that's all for now. I'm John Tickles, and I look forward to our next random encounter.
What you talking about, Willis?